93 years old, surrounded by 600 guards, and yet he died. The unsolved mystery of Rudolf Hess. Between 1966 and 1987, in the heart of West Berlin, stood one of the most extraordinary prisons in modern history, a fortress of concrete and steel built to contain just one man. His name was Rudolf Hess, once one of Adolf Hitler's most trusted confidants, a figure so deeply woven into the Nazi high command that his shadow seemed to follow the Führer everywhere. For over 2 decades, this aging prisoner lived in almost absolute isolation, guarded day and night by more than 600 soldiers from 4 different Allied nations. His life became a monotonous cycle of solitude, silence, and the occasional guarded walk in the prison yard. He refused visits from his wife and son, shut himself away from the world, and spoke to almost no one. Yet, on the sweltering afternoon of the 17th of August, 1987, something happened that would shock the world. At 93 years old, frail, nearly blind, limping on a weakened leg, Hess somehow slipped past one of the most impenetrable security operations in existence. Moments later, he was found inside a small garden shed within the prison grounds. What happened inside that shed is the subject of one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century, a mystery tangled in conspiracy, silence, and suspicion. Before we can understand the controversy surrounding his final moments, we must first trace his long, winding path from an ambitious young soldier in World War I to the most famous and loneliest prisoner in the world. Early life and rise in the Nazi Party. Rudolf Hess was born in 1894 into an affluent German family living in Alexandria, Egypt. His upbringing was one of privilege, fine education, cultured surroundings, and the sense of destiny often instilled in the children of the upper class. Yet beneath this comfortable exterior, Hess harbored a restless spirit and a fierce patriotism. When the thunder of World War I echoed across Europe in 1914, the young Hess answered the call. He enlisted in the German artillery, serving with determination in some of the war's most grueling battles, including the Somme and Verdun. His bravery did not go unnoticed. The coveted Iron Cross was pinned to his uniform. But his service came at a price: severe wounds on multiple occasions, the worst in 1917, when a bullet tore into his chest, narrowly missing his spine. The injury almost ended his life, but instead it seemed to harden his resolve. After months of recovery, Hess made an unexpected move. He began training as a pilot in the Imperial German Air Service. Although the war ended before he could test his skills in aerial combat, those flying lessons would one day influence a daring decision that changed the course of his life. When the guns fell silent in 1918, Germany lay humiliated and battered by defeat. The bitterness of the post-war years shaped a generation of disillusioned young men, and Hess was no exception. He enrolled at the University of Munich to study economics and history, but it was in 1920, in a crowded hall, that his life's trajectory shifted forever. That day, he heard Adolf Hitler speak for the first time. The fiery rhetoric, the absolute certainty, the sweeping vision, it all struck Hess like lightning. He joined the fledgling Nazi Party almost immediately, becoming one of its earliest and most devoted members. He stood beside Hitler during the failed beer hall putsch of 1923, and when the coup collapsed in gunfire, he never wavered. His loyalty was rewarded. Hess became Hitler's personal secretary, his shadow, his silent confidant, his unwavering aide. This was no ceremonial position. Hess played a role in shaping Nazi policy, even personally shielding Hitler during an assassination attempt when a bomb exploded at a rally. The injuries he sustained that day only deepened his prestige within the movement. In the years that followed, Hess was elevated to the position of minister without portfolio, wielding influence in health, education, the economy, and most chillingly legislation targeting Jews. He was unapologetically anti-Semitic, sharing Hitler's belief that Germany's troubles could be blamed on the Jewish people. His devotion was absolute, until a disagreement over the future of the war set him on a path that would lead to betrayal, disgrace, and lifelong imprisonment. The daring flight to Britain. By 1940, Nazi Germany seemed unstoppable. Poland had fallen, France had surrendered. Across Europe, Hitler's armies swept forward like a storm. Yet inside the upper ranks of the Third Reich, tension simmered. Rudolf Hess, ever loyal but not blind to reality, began to question one of Hitler's most ambitious plans, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. To Hess, the strategy was madness. Opening a second front while still at war with Britain would stretch Germany's military to breaking point. In his mind, there was only one way to save the Reich: make peace with Britain before turning east. And Hess, convinced of his own diplomatic abilities, believed he could achieve it. The plan was audacious, almost delusional. According to Hess's information that would prove disastrously wrong, King George VI would be receptive to a peace deal if only the right channels were used. The man Hess believed could open those doors was the Duke of Hamilton, an influential British nobleman with ties to the monarchy. Drawing on the flight skills he had honed during World War I, Hess decided to undertake the mission himself. He would fly solo from Germany to Scotland, meet the Duke, and persuade him to arrange an audience with the king. From there, Hess imagined a peace treaty would follow. Britain would withdraw from the war, and Germany would be free to focus on defeating the Soviet Union. On the evening of May 10th, 1941, Hess climbed into a Messerschmitt Bluff 110, armed with maps, fuel, and a naive sense of destiny. For hours, he flew through the darkness, navigating by starlight and compass. Nearing the Scottish coast, he parachuted from his aircraft, landing awkwardly in a field. British authorities quickly arrested him. Hess insisted he had come as a peace envoy. But in London, Prime Minister Winston Churchill and the King wasted no time dismissing the idea. To them, Hess's arrival was less a diplomatic breakthrough and more a baffling act of desperation. The Duke of Hamilton did meet with Hess, but only to confirm his story before passing it on to Churchill. When the news reached Hitler, the reaction was volcanic. Hess was stripped of his titles, denounced as mentally unstable, and condemned as a traitor. Should he ever return to Germany, Hitler decreed, he would be executed. From that moment on, Hess's fate was sealed. He became a political embarrassment, neither a free man nor a valued prisoner of war. He would spend the rest of the conflict behind British walls, his dream of brokering peace nothing more than a humiliating memory. Imprisonment and the long years at Spandau. After his capture in 1941, Rudolf Hess was kept under strict guard in Britain for the remainder of World War II. There was no special treatment, no diplomatic negotiations, only confinement. When the war ended in 1945, the victors faced the monumental task of bringing the leaders of Nazi Germany to justice. Hess, once the second most powerful man in the Reich, now stood in the dock at the Nuremberg trials. The charges against him were severe: crimes against peace, conspiracy, and participation in the planning of aggressive war. Many expected him to face the gallows alongside other top Nazi figures. Yet Hess's case was unusual. He claimed to have suffered from amnesia, his memory conveniently fading whenever it served his defense. He appeared erratic, sometimes silent, sometimes rambling, leaving the tribunal uncertain whether he was genuinely unstable or simply performing for sympathy. In 1946, the verdict came. The court spared him the death penalty, but sentenced him to life imprisonment. His new home would be Spandau Prison in West Berlin, a massive, fortress-like complex built to hold hundreds of prisoners. But by the mid-1962nd, something extraordinary happened. Every other inmate had either been released or died. Hess became the sole occupant of a prison designed for 700 men. From 1966 until his death in 1987, Hess lived in near total isolation. His only human contact came from the rotating guard units of British, American, French, and Soviet soldiers, over 600 in total, all tasked with ensuring he never escaped. His world shrank to a cell, a tiny garden, and a strict daily routine. At first, Hess refused all visits from his wife and son. Only when age and illness began to break his body did he relent. He complained of constant stomach pains, sleepless nights, and a persistent fear that his food was being poisoned. His lawyers petitioned repeatedly for parole, citing his deteriorating health, but the Allies, especially the Soviets, blocked every attempt. Despite decades in prison, Hess never expressed remorse for his role in the Nazi regime. His anti-Semitic beliefs remained intact, as did his loyalty to Hitler's memory. For historians, Spandau became less a place of punishment and more a strange living monument, a decaying old man embodying an ideology the world had condemned, yet still refusing to let it go. The mysterious death of Rudolf Hess. On the 17th of August, 1987, Rudolf Hess was 93 years old, frail, nearly blind, his joints stiffened by arthritis, and one leg dragging when he walked. Yet Spandau Prison remained locked in its elaborate security routine. More than 600 guards from 4 nations watching a single man. That afternoon, something extraordinary and deeply suspicious happened. Somehow, Hess managed to leave the constant surveillance of his cell and make his way, unchallenged, to a small garden shed within the prison grounds. Moments later, when guards found him, it was too late. Hess was slumped on the floor. A lamp cord was tied around his neck, fastened to a window latch above. In his pocket was a handwritten note, his final message thanking his family for their care and love. The official verdict: suicide by hanging. But almost immediately, doubts began to swirl. How could a man so frail, with limited eyesight, restricted mobility, and hands crippled by arthritis, have tied a cord tightly enough to strangle himself? This was a man who, in recent years, had struggled to hold utensils at mealtime, yet now, the authorities claimed, he had methodically prepared his own death. His lawyer, convinced from the start that Hess had been murdered, pointed the finger at British intelligence. Hess's son, Wolf Rudiger Hess, went further, suggesting that his father had been silenced because he intended to reveal embarrassing wartime secrets, particularly alleged British war crimes during World War II. The theory was compelling to some, especially given the strange circumstances, yet official autopsies confirmed suicide, and no conclusive evidence of foul play ever surfaced. Even so, the suspicion never faded. For many, the idea of Rudolf Hess quietly ending his life after more than 40 years in captivity felt wrong. In the days that followed, Spandau Prison's gates closed for the last time. Fearing the site could become a shrine for neo-Nazis, the Allied authorities ordered the building demolished and its debris scattered. The prison that had held one of history's most notorious men vanished from Berlin's landscape, its mysteries buried with it. To this day, the debate continues. Did Rudolf Hess, the most solitary prisoner in modern history, truly take his own life? Or was he silenced to ensure his secrets died with him? Special section. Lesser known facts about Rudolf Hess. While Rudolf Hess's life is often reduced to 3 defining moments: his loyalty to Hitler, his solo flight to Britain, and his mysterious death, there are hidden chapters and peculiar details that make his story even more remarkable. For example, few people realize that Hess spent much of his early childhood in Egypt, where his family ran a successful import-export business. Surrounded by a blend of European colonial culture and Middle Eastern tradition, young Rudolf grew up speaking multiple languages, including fluent English, a skill that later shaped his misguided belief he could negotiate directly with British elites. Another little-known fact: Hess was a devoted student of esoteric philosophies. During his university years, he became fascinated with astrology, mysticism, and occult beliefs, ideas that were not uncommon among certain Nazi circles. Some historians speculate that these interests may have influenced his fatal decision to undertake his solo peace mission in 1941, believing destiny, rather than strategy, was guiding him. Then there is the curious case of Hess's amnesia at the Nuremberg trials. While the world debated whether it was genuine or staged, medical experts quietly noted that his memory lapses seemed selective, often occurring at moments that could incriminate him and conveniently improving when he wished to make political statements. Even after years in prison, Hess continued to hint cryptically that he knew secrets about the war that he would never reveal until the right moment. Perhaps most unsettling is the fact that Hess outlived almost every other top-ranking Nazi leader. Men who commanded armies or oversaw entire regions were executed or died decades earlier, yet Hess lingered in Spandau into the late 20th century. This longevity turned him into a living relic of the Third Reich, an uncomfortable reminder to the world that the horrors of that era were not as distant as many preferred to believe. Finally, there are persistent rumors, though never proven, that Hess was not always the man in Spandau. Some conspiracy theorists claim that after his capture in 1941, Britain quietly substituted a double to play the role of Hess for the remainder of his life, either to protect intelligence secrets or to manipulate post-war politics. While the theory is widely dismissed by historians, the lack of transparency around certain wartime documents has ensured it will likely never die completely. These shadows, whispers, and unanswered questions keep Rudolf Hess's story alive not just as history, but as an enduring mystery. Conclusion and audience engagement. Rudolf Hess's life reads like a tragic, almost surreal arc, rising from the privileged son of a wealthy merchant to one of the most influential figures in the Nazi hierarchy, only to fall into disgrace, isolation, and an end shrouded in suspicion. His daring solo flight to Britain remains one of the strangest episodes of the Second World War, a mix of ambition, naivety, and desperation. His decades at Spandau transformed him from a political player into a living ghost, watched over by hundreds, yet visited by almost no one. And then there is his death, a moment that should have been straightforward, yet has only deepened the intrigue. Was it truly the final act of an old man who had nothing left but silence, or the closing chapter of a secret the world was never meant to hear? What makes Hess's story so compelling is not only the history it contains, but the unanswered questions it leaves behind. His life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about loyalty taken to dangerous extremes, about the human capacity for both conviction and delusion, and about the way history sometimes hides as much as it reveals. Now, more than 3 decades after his death, his name still sparks debate. Theories continue to circulate, files remain locked, and the small shed in Spandau is long gone, but the mystery endures. So, I'll turn the question to you. Do you believe Rudolf Hess committed suicide, or do you think he was silenced to protect secrets that could have changed how we view the war? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'll be reading them all.